It's Chelsea.
It's Nina.
And you're in the Critics' Kingdom.
Hey everybody, Today we're going to be doing Under Wraps and wish you all a happy beginning of the Halloween month.
Halloween spirit.
Yeah.
I don't know, Chelsea. How weensy do you get?
Weensy?
This time
Is that the word for it?
It's definitely not.
I don't decorate my apartment, if that's what you're asking. I'm not that type. But, I was born in October, so I have an affinity with this month. I feel inclined to the spooky.
Okay.
Let's say that.
I appreciate that. I feel like I love the pretend of it all.
Mm-hmm.
Like, it's okay to be weird.
Mm-hmm.
You know? And I appreciate that because I am naturally a strange human. So it's nice to be able to sort of like express that in a fuller way.
Let your freak flag fly.
Wow.
Fly fry.
You want to try again, or do you feel like
how
we
now,
should
brown
move on?
cow? No, I'm not going to say that again because it's not going to work.
That's entirely fair. But see, it's already affecting us. Like the spooky, strange,
the ghouls and the goblins.
They are out and they are about right now. But yeah, so Under Wraps, first Disney Channel original movie.
Yes. The first one that came out in 1997, and if you are one of those people that looked up or think like, wait, what about all these like other films that I know of on Disney Channel that
Suzy
premiered, in like the 80s or the 90s or the earlier 90s? I would just like to say that Disney considers this as their first Disney Channel original film, and that they also premiered a lot of movies before this, but they weren't making them. So that's like the difference. But yeah, I think this is like a good start though. Like this was a great like first film to have made.
Yeah. I remember as a kid I loved this movie. That it wasn't one of my favorite Disney Channel original movies. I do think that it was one of my preferred Halloween Disney Channel original movies for sure.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, and I was sort of shocked to learn that it was the first one, because in my head it just doesn't, like, in my head even Brink feels older than this.
Yeah, no, I agree. I remember when I saw that and I was like, oh, I did not think Under Wraps was the first one ever, but cool. You know?
But yeah, or that there was such a gap between this and like You Lucky Dog,
which came afterward in 98,
nearly a year later,
in the summer of 98. This came out Halloween 97. So clearly it was like, I think Disney was testing stuff out and it worked, or they at least thought that they could make it work.
Yeah, and it is also, I think it's kind of interesting that the first DCOM was a Halloween film. Like they specifically did it as like a themed release, but they didn't do a Christmas one, which is interesting.
Yeah, they didn't do a Christmas of 97. That is a choice. I don't know why. Maybe it's because Halloween, I feel like, tends to go across a lot of just like everything in the States. Like it's just like it's such a general popular thing here. It's kind of regardless of religion or culture or whatever. Like everybody kind of celebrates not even celebrates, but like everybody
acknowledges
it, knows what is involved with it.
Kids like monsters. It's a very E.T.
candies
sort
involved.
Of film.
You can't really.
They used to tell us that there were razor blades and apples.
Yeah.
Weren't there never any razor blades and apples?
No. It was just like a myth.
Whole thing.
I feel like that comes around like every year. But also, I'm like, the older that I get, and I'm not a parent, but the older I get, I'm like, I can understand why that kind of thing would freak you out as a parent. Because essentially it is your kid collecting food from random people.
It is.
Like, and even, that's why a lot of parents are like, you need to make sure that it's like the pre-wrapped candies.
Yeah.
Like, don't go to people's houses and get like pie
candied
or
apples
something.
And stuff like that.
Yeah. Or like food that they made. It's like, I get it.
Pie. I feel like if I were a kid trick-or-treating and someone handed me a pie, I
Like
would
a pumpkin
be
pie. What would you
so
do?
upset. I'm like, what? Like, I came here for candy. Like, I want some Smarties and Skittles and Snickers. I want those types of treats. Like, I don't want something my mom can make me.
I bet you that's how the witch got Hansel and Gretel in.
Exactly. And Hansel was like, Mom never makes peppermint candy. She never does that. Look at all the colors in the swirl.
Yes.
And that's how they ended up in the house. Or stepmom. The real version is a stepmom, right? We're getting off track. We should
Yeah.
probably recap this film for
We do
everybody.
that.
Yeah.
Nina, take it away.
You'll get used to it. Okay, well, this film actually, it starts off pretty fun because we start off in another film. There's this little, all-American, very blonde family, it seems. I don't know if they're all blonde. I remember the children being blonde.
The children were very blonde, too. It was very Children of the Corn.
They're eating dinner, and something ensues where one of the kids is, like, sent up to his room for being a brat or something of that nature. And the dad goes to, like, put stuff in the garbage disposal, I think. And then as he's doing that, through the window pops out, like, this very quote-unquote hideous sort of wart-covered monster. And then there's a huge, there's a jump scare moment, and we go out and we see, actually, two of our main characters, Marshall and Gilbert, who are in the theaters watching this film. And Gilbert is not having it. Gilbert is trying to go home. He does not enjoy this film. Marshall is literally eating this bad boy up like the popcorn with the butter, like just enjoying the hell out of it. So we just get very quickly the idea, Marshall really likes sort of horror, spooky, scary stuff, the things that people usually kind of run from, and his best friend Gilbert is a lot more of a cautious human being. So they're walking home, and they pass by this, like, old, creepy, very, like, Grey Gardens looking establishment of a house. And as they pass by, Marshall is like, oh, that's Mr. Kubat's house. Gilbert, you deliver papers for him. Like, what's he like? Or what's it like delivering papers there? That must be crazy. Or what's it like on the inside, too? Because when you go and you get your money every month, you see the inside of his house when he opens the door. And Gilbert's like, actually, that's never happened. And Marshall's like, what do you mean that's never happened, Gilbert? And Gilbert says that he has never gone and collected money from Mr. Kubat because he's terrified of him. To which Marshall responds, Gilbert, I love you, but what a bitch. Like, we gotta go get this money.
Because it's been like 2 years.
It's been like 2 years and he hasn't been paid. And Marshall is not having that because that's insane. And Marshall is right. I don't think that he should have done exactly what he decides to do, which is go to the house right away, because it's definitely at night.
Late. Yeah, it was like
it's dark. I mean, they're kids, so I assume that maybe
7
like
or 8.
7, 8, maybe 9.
Yeah.
On like a Friday,
Yeah.
but still, that's not like my mommy would not let me knock on anybody's door at that time, and I would get in a lot of trouble for doing that. So they go up to the house, and Mr. Kubat, this is how we learn that he's a mean, cranky old man, literally chases them off, sticks a pit bull on them to chase them off of his property, which is not okay, because they're 12-year-old boys.
Exactly.
Don't stick pit bulls on children. General rule of thumb for anyone listening who might consider doing that.
A white-on-white crime.
Yes. So the next morning, they go to school, and we meet their other sort of best friend, I guess, like the third member of their little trio, Amy, who's kind of like one of those cool girls from the 90s. Mm-hmm. Like, we can get more into that later, but she's, she's quippy, and she's, like, very self-confident, and sort of runs the boys in her life. And she's like, hey, guys, did you hear? Mr. Kubat had a heart attack last night and died. And they're like, what? That's crazy. We saw him last night. And she's like, nope. My mom is the realtor for his estate, and, she got a hot ticket, and she told me that happened. So they're going to try to sell this house. we should definitely go over there and see all of his cool, creepy, weird stuff. And Marshall is like, hell yes, that is what I've dreamed of my whole life. Gilbert's like, hell no, that doesn't make any damn sense. Why would we go into a dead man's house? But they're like, essentially the two of Amy and Marshall overrule, and they're like, we're gonna go. So they end up going that night, and they're gonna go in through the window to the basement. And in order to do that, they have to like really, really push at a bookcase that's blocking the window. As they push at the bookcase falls, and we see that it hits a sarcophagus that was in the basement. There were two Egyptian sarcophagi lying beside each other, and one of them gets hit. We see that the moonlight is hitting that now open coffin, and they try to send Gilbert down first, which, if you got a scared friend, never put them down first. It just doesn't make any sense. So they try to put him down first, and he's dangling, like, it's like a 10-foot drop. So he ends up just dangling from this open window, terrified, screaming for his life. And they pick him back up, and they're like, okay, fine. Like, I guess this is a wash. We can't go down there and see all the cool stuff, including the Egyptian sarcophagi. But as they're walking, Gilbert's like, oh, snap, y'all. My glasses are missing. They clearly fell into this basement. So they've got to go back. And when they go back, Amy is like, we'll just use the key this time. And Gilbert is very reasonably upset because you had a key the whole time and you did not use it. You instead chose to dangle me from a window. That's not real friendship under any circumstances. So they go in, and Gilbert's too scared to go downstairs into the basement. So his friends go down searching for his glasses. And while they're down there, we see, dun dun dun, there is a mummy upstairs. Gilbert freaks the fuck out because there's a mummy in the house. And at first, everybody's just frightened, and it goes typical sort of horror movie fashion. But then, because Marshall is a little bit, he's a bit quicker to investigate things than he is to judge the hearts of children. He figures out that the mummy, who will later be named Harold, is actually a kind mummy. It's just that, he is physically incapable of talking because he's tongueless, so he can't, tell them. He's also in a new time, in a new place, so he can't tell them, hey, I found Gilbert's glasses. But they figure out, oh, he found Gilbert's glasses, and he's just as confused about this situation as you are. So they decide, okay, we're going to come back tomorrow. So they come back the next day, and lo and behold, they find that everything is gone. Like, all of the sarcophagi are gone, the house is being cleaned out, and there's a bunch of movers moving stuff out. They're confused, but then they run into my personal favorite character, Leonard, who is clearly the town gossip. He has all of the tea, and he is all of maybe 7 years old, at the absolute oldest. Leonard is standing there with his rag, not blankie. Let's get this very clear. He has a rag just in case he has to wipe up any spills from all the mess y'all make running around in these streets. And he has the information for them. He's like, listen, homie had a bunch of stuff in there that they had to repossess because he owes money to the government, and they came in and they cleared everything out, and a big old yellow truck came and they put all the stuff on a yellow truck, and now it's gone. So they're sort of freaking out, and in the meanwhile, we see that Harold has managed to not end up with the truck, but now he's out in the real world in the daytime, just sort of going through mummy antics. And it's not very good for him. He's running around the place, and he ends up in a hospital. They think he's a burn victim. It's just a whole Harold in the real world is not working.
Yeah.
And the kids have also, because they kind of don't know what to do, they've gone to the local sort of lore bookstore, I'd call it. All things sort of Dungeons, Dragons, Witches, Wizards, Monsters, that Marshall apparently frequents all the time. and the guy that works there is named Bruce, and they ask him about mummies. They say it's for a school project, and he tells them, he's like, here's this lore about mummies coming back to life, that if it's during the festival of the dead, so Halloween, right? It's Hallows Eve. I think like the next night is Halloween Eve, like the next night is Halloween. If it's during the festival of the dead and the sarcophagus is open and the moonlight streams on it, then a mummy can come back to life. But they have to get back into their coffin before midnight, essentially on Halloween, or they turn to dust. So now the kids are like, oh snap, we really gotta find Harold. Because I don't think they've called him Harold yet, but that will be his name. They really gotta find Harold because he's about to turn to dust. So they happen to, Harold's doing all his hijinks, he runs away, they happen to like run upon him on their bikes, like looking for him. And so they take him back to Marshall's house. His mom literally comes in, but because Marshall's room is filled, it's literally like a horror prop master's studio.
It's literally like an ode to horror films.
It's kind of impressive, to be quite honest. Like, I don't know if I would let my kid be outfitted that way.
Yeah.
But to each his own. His mom's pretty cool with it. She literally thinks Harold is just another decoration that her son has picked up.
Mm-hmm.
But they decide to hide Harold in his room. And a little bit later, we learn that, okay, so his parents are divorced and his mom's been dating this guy. And, Marshall, he's not taking the divorce badly, but it's definitely leaving him with scars. He's telling Harold essentially that he doesn't believe love is real because people can just end it. It's something that isn't permanent, even though it should be. And he doesn't really like his mom's boyfriend just because he seems too nice, and he's not really about it. So Harold is like, he can't speak. But Harold realizes this child is in need of comforting. So he gives him a gift. And, Marshall feels comforted and they bond a bit, like emotionally. And Marshall goes to bed. Harold, again, gets into some mummy hijinks, ends up outside chasing a dog in the middle of the night. While he's outside chasing said dog, he sees a yellow truck with a sarcophagus on it. And he decides to follow the truck, and it leads him to a museum. And then Marshall wakes up in the middle of the night and is like, oh snap, the mummy's gone. So he gets his motley crew together, and they all go chasing after the mummy to the museum. How he gets these other children up in the middle of the night without anybody's parents knowing, I am not sure.
Yeah, they don't tell us that.
It doesn't matter, but it is a question I had. If anybody has suggestions, please feel free to let me know how you think that might have gone down, because I did not live in any type of suburb, so I just don't know.
Yeah,
if that's
they
even
didn't
possible.
Previously establish that they all lived like right next door to each other or something, where you could have done like a game of walkie-talkie or telephone. So it was very like
one long string.
Yeah, like I feel like sometimes they'll show that in movies, but this wasn't a case of that.
So anyway, so they follow Harold to this museum. Harold's at the museum. There are two things that essentially happen. First of all, we see this, tableau with like hieroglyphics on it, and it essentially tells in hieroglyphics the same story that they learned from Bruce, that this is the legend. So now Harold understands that he has to get back in his sarcophagus by a certain time. They also see the way that the other sarcophagus that was in the basement is there, and it's of a queen, and they see the way that he fawns over it, and they read the blurb, the like caption to let you know what's going on in the exhibit, and it essentially reveals that Harold was her high priest who was like buried with her when she died. But it's clear that Harold has more than just a,
protector
political love for
her
or a religious love for her. And they're like, oh snap, his coffin isn't there. So they're still sort of trying to figure out, all right, what are they going to do? Because they have a deadline. So the next day, they're trying to figure it out in their backyard. And our favorite man about the town,
Leonard,
without his parents, literally, where are they? Is he an orphan? Leonard shows up, literally just waltzes right into their backyard and is like, listen, y'all, And they're like, Leonard, you can't be in here. You can't do that. You can't just roll up in somebody's house. And he's like, I thought you want to know about this truck I saw. And they're like, what? You saw a yellow truck? And he's like, yeah, y'all, I saw the yellow truck. It is at this old abandoned ice cream warehouse. Why was Leonard at an old abandoned ice cream warehouse by himself? That is another question that should be answered at some point.
And it's one that's never answered. I mean, Leonard is truly the Wendy Williams of this neighborhood. Mm-hmm. Like, he's just like, how you doing? To everybody.
I imagine that he develops a very fruitful career.
Yes.
In revealing secrets to the public.
But it's the moment he popped up on screen, I could tell because he looked like he had been sucking his thumb for too long, and typically kids that do that are messy as hell.
That is so true, because all they do is listen.
Literally.
They don't speak at all.
They don't say anything. They know all the drama.
I definitely have a cousin like that. And she's
someone please try and prove me wrong, but that's my theory.
So they dress Harold up as like a 70s stud so they can walk around in daylight with him, and they all go to this abandoned ice cream plant. And when they get there, Marshall overhears Mr. Kubat with his goons, because shocker, Mr. Kubat isn't dead. We get a glimpse of that early on, but this is the first time that the kids realize it. And he sees that, like, Mr. Kubat, like, has the coffin, or they're looking for it. They're about to acquire the coffin. But he's like, oh, snap, he's alive. And he's not crazy old Mr. Kubots with the Kubat. I'm saying that name so wrong. Kubat with the pit bull. He's Mr. Kubat in like a suit.
The businessman.
Bald head, just like menacing with his goon squad. So he's like, damn, Harold, we gotta go. And they leave, but Harold accidentally gets his wrappings caught on something, so a piece of the linen cloth comes off, and Mr. Kubat finds that, but his goons also see the kids running away from the factory. So Mr. Kubat's like, I am sure that they have my mummy, and I want him. So there's this Halloween carnival that's happening in the town that night, and they all go. Kubat's goons show up at the carnival, and they're sort of trying to play a game of cat and mouse with them all night. But in terms of costumes, I would have to say, because they all go in costume, but my favorite is the fact that Little Gilbert shows up in those Oakley looking sunglasses and a bright pink boa. And I think Marshall's like, who are you even supposed to be? And homie with the straight face is just like, I'm Dennis Rodman. Obviously, because it's 1998. And 1997, you're right. Yeah, it's not 98, it's 97. And the Bulls are doing their damn thing. Mm-hmm. And I appreciate that this 12-year-old little boy, figured out that was the easiest way to be Dennis Rodman. And it's also nice to see someone be a black person without putting anything on their skin.
Yes. See, it can be done.
And even children know it. Right. So just a general note on that to the public. But so they're playing this kind of game of cat and mouse. Harold is actually in a sort of great predicament because he doesn't have to pretend anything. Everyone's just like, oh, he's a mummy. Mm-hmm. And he's in a new environment. He thinks that he sees a actual Egyptian queen. And he bows to her and all this stuff. It's obviously someone in costume, and they dance, and they start having a time, or she starts having a time with him. Mm-hmm. He can't speak, so she's not heard him say a word back. He just kind of grunts, and she goes on. But then someone walks over and is like, why are you dancing with my husband? Because she thinks it's her husband in a mummy costume. And the other queen is like, what are you talking about? He's not married. And Marshall shows up and tries to defuse the situation, but they don't believe him, or they don't interact with him because he's a child. So the Cleopatra one starts unwrapping Harold. Unwrap Harold, you see that she sees his face, realizes he's dead. And it's like, oh my god, he's dead. Ah! And everybody freaks out. That to me doesn't track because it's Halloween, and he doesn't look particularly dead underneath the mummy wrappings. So if I were a grown-up, I would assume... me now, if I did that, I would assume it was makeup.
Right.
But It's a Disney Channel original movie, so fine. But that freak out is what calls the goons over to them. And so now they gotta bust out of there. So they enlist Bruce to help them, who's running a haunted house there, and they escape through Bruce's haunted house into his hearse, because that is what this man drives as a car. A hearse filled with like prosthetic limbs
Yeah.
of various monsters. That would be so problematic today.
It's literally like a Spirit Halloween store, guys. In
But
the hearse.
yeah, it's kind of hilarious. But they get into the hearse. Harold is blocking the door so the goons don't get them, and Bruce is like, "We gotta drive away." To which Marshall is not trying to have. They really have to like pull him away from Harold because he doesn't want to give him up. So the goons get Harold, and now Bruce and the trio, this little motley crew, they've got to hatch a plan to get Harold back and get Harold and his coffin back so that they can save him. And they hatch a plan that involves Bruce and Amy using prosthetic limbs to like beat down the lookout and then causing a distraction so that Marshall can go in and get the sarcophagus. And Harold, Gilbert is like, I know I'm a coward, so I'm not going to be involved in this. So they go in, the whole thing happens, and Marshall's going to get the sarcophagus, but then Mr. Kuba is literally there, and he explains to him that he's doing all of this because he's, the IRS is looking into him for tax evasion for mad long, and he was a curator for a museum and never felt like he got his just desserts. So he stole a bunch of their artifacts and is now trying to sell them on the black market.
Which is crazy,
after faking his death so that the IRS can't chase him down. It's absurd. But anyway, so everybody gets captured. That's the whole point. Everybody, they all get captured. Gilbert is sitting in the hearse my friends aren't back yet. They should be back by now. So Gilbert drives the hearse into the side of the building, and ceiling pipes collapse on all the bad guys and don't harm any of the good guys. But Kuba kind of jumps up and he's like, you know what? I'm this mess. I'm done with this mess. And he pulls out a gun, which for a DCOM is insane. I don't think I've ever, that's the only gun we see, right? Well, we don't know yet. But
yeah, thus far, that's the only gun we've seen.
That's I saw that and I was like, this is incredible.
Right.
I don't think I've ever seen a gun on Disney Channel.
They clearly didn't have any rules for this first one because there was no protocol or standards.
It was also the 90s, bro. Yeah. The 90s was a ruleless, lawless time. Anything that could happen.
No church in that wild.
Yeah, that's so true. So he pulls out this gun, and Harold is essentially just like, no, we're not having this, and he handles him. He handles the situation, and they win. So they win. It's almost midnight. Harold's got to get back into sarcophagus. Marshall, doesn't really want him to go, but wants him to be okay. He does this thing where he opens up the other sarcophagus and lets the moon in so that it can awaken his queen/priestess. Mm-hmm. And she wakes up and she's like, oh, Harold, lovely. And they have a sweet little moment and say goodbye, forever. And then he takes off his amulet that he was wearing and he gives it to Marshall as a keepsake. And and he gets in his coffin and he's safe. And then after that, it's sort of the next day, and Marshall's mom says something along the lines of that she won't be seeing Bruce anymore. Marshall's like, what? Why, Mom? And she essentially is like, I can tell that you're not really feeling it. And Marshall is like, wait, no, do you love him? He literally asks, do you love him? And she's like, yeah, I think I do. And he's like, then you should be with him. Don't let anything get in the way of love. You guys should be together. And at the same time, this whole time, Amy has been really there for him. And it's clearly one of those things. Yes, she's being a good friend, but she's also trying she clearly she likes him, and so she's trying to mac a little bit. And he's slowly starting to realize it, starting to realize that he might be about it as well. So he's getting ready to go out with them, and he's he's wearing a nice shirt, and he gels his hair back. It's a whole thing. And he goes downstairs. He and Gilbert go downstairs, open the door, and Amy's in a dress. And they have this really cute moment where it looks like something might be about to start, and even Gilbert sort of looking between them, like what is going on, what's about to happen. But then he makes fun of her, and she makes fun of him back, and it's just them teasing again. And Gilbert's like, "Oh God, thank God! For a second, I thought things were gonna get weird." And then they all just sort of walk into the sunset together, and not sunset, but down their suburban street.
Down the street, yeah.
There's
Down
grass
the street.
lawns.
The equivalent
It's
of
wholesome.
a sunset for kids.
It's very wholesome.
Yeah.
And yeah, that is Under Wraps, the first Disney Channel original movie in all of its glory. So, Chelsea, your thoughts on this? Because I feel like you said you remembered this less than I did.
Yeah, I feel like I maybe watched it like once, because I remembered all the mummy portions, or I feel like they used to play them like the scenes with with Harold all dressed up in the 70s gear. I feel like that used to be a commercial on Disney, weirdly, a lot. But yeah, like I didn't remember it quite as well, but it's a fun ride, honestly. I mean, I feel like Marshall is like the first protagonist we get, and he's also very empathetic.
Deeply empathetic.
Which doesn't follow for the rest of them, but like most of the other DCOMs, that's not necessarily true. But especially as like the child of like divorced parents, from what we've seen in DCOMs. But yeah, no, he's like a good kid, and you can tell, like, it's like there's a reason that he gloms on to Harold so quickly, and it's because he clearly is looking for somebody to love him and for him to love and like pour his whole self into, without it, I guess, like looking weird to a degree.
Yeah, or I guess maybe not necessarily looking weird, but I don't know. I had this because he does say that whole thing to Harold about the fact that like the love wasn't permanent, and I think that that's an interesting. It's not an interesting. It's like you hear it sometimes in films about divorce or where a character is dealing with divorced parents, but a lot more times I feel like what you hear is this idea of like I don't like their parents like not like them being sort of at fault or like I don't know like
Right.
that sort of situation.
Right.
Whereas for him it's literally just a thing of it's like what he's communicating is that there is this thing that was stable or that I thought was stable, and it's literally just not. And he equates that with love. That's what the word that he uses for it, because he's like, my parents were together and they were in love, and then they weren't anymore. And so it's weird that he would put that into a mummy that he knows has to go back in the coffin, but yeah, he's sort of looking for, if not the stability of it, it's like for an outlet for that sort of stuff.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, I think that I can imagine a situation where the psychology of that could be that because something is scary and because you know to expect a jump scare, like, you can put stock in that. You watch a horror movie and you know what to expect.
Right.
This is Warthead whatever number, right? You know what to expect from this movie, and you can count on that in a way that you haven't been able to count, or that recently it feels like you can't count on your parents or the people around you. So I think like that's sort of the destabilization that he's experiencing.
And then I think also this film feels very contemporary to its time, that I feel like added to it in like a really good way, because even like when we were talking about like the Dennis Rodman reference, even a little bit later they make a whole when Marshall is gelling and getting ready to see Amy again, and he's talking to Gilbert, like he says something and then Gilbert's like, this isn't House of Style. And it's just like, it's such a specific reference, but of like 1997, and I feel like a lot of the other DCOMs that we've watched don't, and not that you need that, I don't think you have to have that in a movie to make it feel like it's of its time, but I think it is a unique thing. But a lot of the other DCOMs don't necessarily have that. Like, I don't remember Smart House having any specific 98 references other than like the fashion, like, you know, like that kind of stuff that's automatically kind of in there, but they don't have any like specific references. But it's like with this, you have the Dennis Rodman thing, and then you have the style, like the House of Style,
and even
like,
the fact that the music is
the
real music.
They use like actual like music of.
They use All by Myself and Get Down Tonight are like two songs that
are two of the ones
prevalent in it. Which is probably fun fact. Like, I'm pretty sure that's why it's not on Disney Plus yet.
Oh yeah, also it's not.
It's because
we had to actually buy this one.
Yeah, it's because they're probably like locked in rights conversations.
Yeah, with
somebody or somebody's estate.
Yeah, but yeah, no, it definitely just feels like of the time period, but in like a good way, and one that felt authentic to what I imagine it was like being a 12 or 13-year-old at that time. Because it's like you would have been even if you as a child were not watching House of Style, you know what that is. And you most likely were watching the Bulls win again. So, it's like you knew who Dennis Rodman was. You knew it's just like that kind of thing where it feels grounded in a way that I feel like a lot of the other DCOMs don't have that type of grounding.
I do think, though, that is something that might be a result of the fact that it was the first one that they did. Because the whole idea is that, okay, the Disney Channel original movie, as they clock it, is when they took everything and made it in-house.
Right.
They were going to produce this in their own studios and then premiere it on their own network. And with that, like, I can imagine that with this, like, because when you do that, when you use, like, Dennis Rodman, or you use House of Style, like, those things, if you're being paid, like, if it's a monetary situation in a script, you have to get clearances for that. Like, you essentially have to get a certain level of permission to be able to use those types of references. And sometimes you have to pay money for that. You know, like, it's just a whole thing. And I feel like as this became a machine and as they started making more, it probably became a thing where they were like, we're not going to do that. Like, make the scripts more, like, sort of universal. Like, the scripts can become more universal in that way, which is a good thing for all kids watching it, like, across the country. But at the same time, it's practical for us to not do that. It's practical for us to use Disney-owned things and Disney-owned music and all of that just to sort of knock down costs. So I think that this also becomes like a gem in that way, because it has little elements that you're not necessarily going to get from the other DCOMs.
Right.
Because it was the first one and they hadn't fully tweaked it to just be like a Disney machine yet.
Right.
So that's kind of fun. But yeah, it's a fun film. It's a fun film.
Yeah. I mean, I would definitely say rewatch it if you haven't seen it in a while. Or if maybe you didn't watch it when you were growing up, I think it's still a fun one. Definitely should add it to the Halloween rotation or the October rotation.
They have another one of my favorite off-camera
characters.
Esmeralda, who I don't think that's her actual name.
That's not her actual name.
I think that is what she is currently being called according to Gilbert. But that's Gilbert's mother, who is apparently quite an eccentric character.
Yes.
I
was kind of sad we never meet her, because
me too. She
seemed
fantastic. I would love a spin-off about Esmeralda in Esmeralda's world. I want to see what's going on. I want to see which of her dolls she chooses to take to the movie theaters with her and buy popcorn. Because apparently that has happened in the past.
She's exactly what you said. Like, she is like the true definition of like fantastic, in that it's like a derivative of fantasy. Like, not even just fantastic as in great, like literally like the actual definition of fantastic.
And then even better, because you never see her and you only get to understand her through like
Gilbert's
stories, like things that Gilbert says in passing.
Yes.
As if they're like, it's like he knows that this is not something normal, but this is the only thing he can reference.
Even at the part where he says that she's going to be called Esmeralda because she's role playing right now.
Yeah, I think Amy like looks at him crazy and he's like, just don't ask me any questions.
He's just like, she's role playing, and like that's it,
and let that be.
But I do like that he's not like embarrassed of his mom, because I feel like this is like the peak age when you
Yeah.
are like embarrassed by your parents, even if they are quote unquote cool or normal, you know? Like this is like the point where like something like that for a lot of kids would be like super duper embarrassing.
Yeah, and
'Cause
I mean, maybe he'll get to that point, but yeah, Gilbert Wendt is Dennis Rodman. You know what I mean? I feel like
he's such an interesting, like, it's
yeah,
just
he's an interesting, because he's clearly supposed to be like their nerdy friend. That's who he's supposed to be as an archetype, but he just seems fuller than that.
he definitely
You know,
is.
and it's probably because of Esmeralda.
It definitely
Probably
is
because he's been
Esmeralda.
dealing with this mother of his whole life, and he's like, I can't afford to be, you know, if I'm ashamed or if I'm any of those things about me or her, like my life is just gonna be significantly more difficult.
Right, so it's like just might as well buck up and
Just roll
just be
with
like,
it.
you know what? That's how my mom is. That's how I am.
That's how my mom is. My friend can't deal with his parents getting divorced, so all he wants to do is drag me to monster movies I don't want to see.
But like support, you know, I
Like,
support him.
But
as
I
a
love
friend.
him, so I'm gonna help out.
I do appreciate that like male friendship that they have in here. Because it's like, that's real love when you go out and see a thing with your friend multiple times because you know that they're going through it, but they also won't tell you
Exactly
that they're
what we're
going
talking about,
through
bro.
it.
I
So
don't
you're
like
just
Bruce.
like,
He's too
I
nice.
hate horror films, but I know you love horror films. So
Also-
I will come and sit with you at least for the first half, wait for you, and then we will walk home and hang out together. Like
That's true.
that is true friendship.
I let
right
you
there.
dangle me from a window, like, and I sat with you at lunch the next day. I don't know if I would ever do that.
No.
That seems.
Gilbert is like a true friend.
He is. He's ride or die. And Gilbert said, "You know what? I really don't think they should have been in there this long."
He did. He saved everybody, honestly.
He saved the whole day because by driving the hearse that he was parked out in,
Yes.
which is phenomenal, just as a concept that happened. So yeah, it has its, you know, the montages of Harold running around being a
Mhm.
mummy in the modern world. It's so fun. It feels sort of like Scooby-Doo is the wrong way to say it, but it's that sort of feel of like, you're just watching these monsters be crazy, or these kids be crazy. You know?
Meddling kids.
Yeah, you know,
My favorite
they
genre.
just run around. Like, Mr. Kuba is like a straight up Scooby-Doo villain.
He is a straight up Scooby-Doo villain.
Tax me, the IRS is coming to get me. I had to fake my own death. And you're like, well, that.
Which, by the way,
seems-
there were a lot of kids things that came out in the 90s and early 2000s that were about the IRS, and I want to say that that's why a lot of people in our generation are afraid of the IRS.
That's probably
Because I feel like
pretty
it's
accurate.
instilled in us from like, if you saw this movie when you were 6 years old, you're just like, oh, IRS, and like you already have a concept of it
Yeah,
before 10. And why do you need to know taxes
tax
before 10?
evasion and like white collar crime. I guess it's because we were coming off the 80s.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
so a lot of there was just like some like not as much as would come later, obviously,
No.
in our later sort of teenish years.
Yeah.
But there were some reckonings that were beginning to be had.
There was just a lot going on with taxes.
Yeah,
at
I
that
remember
point.
Wesley Snipes. There was whole thing Wesley
Yep,
Snipes and
Wesley
taxes.
Snipes.
That was a big deal.
There's just a lot of tax evasion going on, but then it was also used as a plot in so many like kids.
So many.
So
Because
much
it's
kids
such light
programming.
crime, you know. It's such an easy way. I think it's such an easy way to make somebody a criminal.
Yeah.
It's like they're a criminal for tax evasion. You're a kid. You're like, okay, that's fine. It's not murder. You know what I mean?
But,
It's not any of the head. Or like he's a thief. You know, I feel like thief got old,
yeah.
so you need to spice it up
So
a
now
bit.
he commits tax evasion.
Exactly, which is another form of thievery. But children don't necessarily understand that right away.
Do we think that this was co-sponsored by the IRS?
Can you imagine?
I wouldn't be surprised.
We want good tax-paying citizens.
Yep.
And we are
going
going
to
to
young.
go to America's like the place of American childhood dreams, and encourage them to develop those habits for us from a very young age. I wouldn't be surprised. Disney Channel in cahoots with the IRS. Maybe. It's definitely not. Don't run with that. Don't tell anybody we said
Listen,
that.
if we're not on next week, y'all will know why. That's all I got.
I'm sorry if that happens. Yeah. Sometimes I talk too
We're
much.
both about to get audited next year.
So quick, so fast.
Like, oh, so you mentioned us. The
What- what'd
agency
you-
that
what-
shall not be named.
What do you think this was?
You thought we were in a democracy?
You ain't seen Beetlejuice? You don't know how this works.
Hmm.
But yeah, it's a solid film. It still holds up. I still enjoy it.
Yeah, it was fun. It was fun to watch.
I do like. I get why it was one of my favorites as a kid, and I still like it.
Mm-hmm.
So, the big question, Chelsea, do you think that you would show it to your kids?
Oh yeah, this is a fun one. And it would definitely be one that you can like lead up to Halloween and kids would enjoy it. It's got some great songs in it. And I just like all three of the main characters. The three kids are just really good in this one. Like there's like growth.
there is growth. Like they all do. Well, I don't know how much Amy grows.
Yeah, except for we
But
don't know as
even-
much
but
about
even-
Amy, but
Yeah, but even like she's still quippy, but she does start to express her feelings towards
Marshall.
more and more
Yeah.
as it progresses. So there's a world in which that's a form of growth, and she just cuts on him a little less.
Yes.
'Cause in the top of the film, she's just ripping those two boys apart, left, right, and center, and it's kind of glorious.
She was throwing out insults like nobody's business.
It's so good. But no, I fully agree. It would definitely be a part of my like Halloween canon. Because I imagine that I would be, like I said, I love this time of year. Apparently in the UK they like do Halloween for real, like it's like a big deal. Or no, I'm lying. That's not what it is. I messed that up. They do Christmas much longer, like from the end of Halloween.
Yeah, because they don't have
Because
Thanksgiving.
they don't have Thanksgiving.
I was like, huh?
No,
I never
that's
heard
not.
that.
That's just not
I
true.
think we're the ones that do like
Yeah, that's literally not true.
Halloween is such an American.
Wow, there
thing.
have been some misspeech has happened on this particular episode, but
It's okay.
uh,
But yeah, no,
But-
they do Christmas longer.
yeah, so that's irrelevant to this conversation. But I'm definitely one of those people who would probably, if I had like a family, do like 30 nights of Halloween kind of situation.
Oh, yeah.
Like I would eat that up, and this would definitely be in that list. I would say, maybe in the earlier days,
Mm-hmm.
but it would be in that list, and I think it's good because it's a film that you can watch with younger kids,
Yeah,
and it's a fun Halloween film as opposed to like a scary one.
agreed.
So there's that.
Yeah, I think I agree. I would show it to my kids. I think it's fun. And I think they just enjoy it,
Yeah, it feels a bit. What I like about this film, it feels a bit timeless.
Yeah.
Like even though it does have very sort of specific references within it, at the same time, it does sort of feel like it can continue to play whenever you put it on.
Yes.
Yeah.
No, I agree. All right. Well, with that, I think we've gone under the
wraps. Yeah.
Yes, we've
Yes,
gone
we
under the
have.
wraps. And we'll catch you guys next week. Have a happy beginning of this fall solstice period. Is it solstice?
No, equinox.
Yes, autumnal and equinox. That's what it is.
Yeah, we're rolling up to the equinox. Solstice is December. December and
in
summer.
Okay.
You get the winter solstice.
Yes.
Little day, big night.
Mm-hmm.
Reverse on the summer month.
Well, have fun at the beginning of this autumnal equinox. And we'll see you guys next week.
Thanks for listening to this week's episode of The Critics Kingdom. Don't forget to follow us on Spotify and SoundCloud so you can stay up to date, as well as interacting and letting us know what you guys think on social media. You can find us on Twitter at Critics Kingdom and on Instagram at The Critics Kingdom. We're excited to talk to you again next week.